Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick, and I'm broadcasting from the Endorphin Effect in Bartlett. So I was supposed to do a Devil's Lake hike with the excursion group, but because of the temperature and the rainfall yesterday and for tomorrow it was too dangerous, so I'm doing this. So this is going to be hopefully a regular weekly Q&A. However, I'm going to keep this on my Facebook page, and then you'll be able to access it later. In case you have any questions, I'll put links to other deeper dives into information, and just check them out. So, and then you can also preemptively strike by holding your questions for future. So, I got 5 questions here. Common questions. First one is there a diet for cancer? And first thing I would say is that you got to get off the crap. So, unfortunately, standard American diet is not that healthy. So, just avoiding some of the processed foods would be the first thing. And then making it a well-balanced diet. You have to have high fiber. You can have meat. I'm plant-based, but you can have meat. You can have a little bit of alcohol, but you have to be moderate with what you do. The idea would be to get away from crap. The next thing would be to maybe consider dancing with the Mediterranean diet. So if you look at parts in the world where people have made it to 100, there's several different flavors, but Mediterranean diet seems to be a common theme. There's Okinawan diet, Costa Rica diet, Sardinia diet, but I think Mediterranean diet's easy because it's so well studied. So give it a try. Look up the Mediterranean diet. Essentially, it goes between fish, legumes, beans, a lot of plants, some meats. So check it out. The next thing, if you want to go even deeper than Mediterranean, would be fasting. So reproducible evidence at this point in time is high for fasting mimicking diet. That's the work of Voltulongo and FMD. Check it out. So the FMD consists of a 5-day blast of a very restrictive diet. And yes, you are eating something, but it's decreased in volume. So again, decreasing volume is important. Fasting mimicking diet for 5 days can actually be done with a Prolon box. Now, it is quite expensive, and I have done Prolon boxes in the past. I'm going to do one this Monday. But I did try, before I went into the box, my own calculations of equivalent box, and it did give a responsiveness. It turned on testosterone, helped lower cortisol, helped lower insulin, and it was affordable. But I had a better blast and better functional testing results when I did the box. So I kind of go between the box when I can afford it, and then my own calculations. But bottom line is, if you decrease volume, you'll have some success. So that's number 2, is get away from the crap. Trying your own hand in eating healthy, maybe inducing a fast of some sort. And those of you who are doing intermittent fasting, it does help. I think intermittent fasting is a way to tell the body that it's not getting anything when the body doesn't have any food. Insulin goes from high to low. And those of you who know insulin's a good hormone, but I think if it's always up and high, it's dangerous. It leads to increasing cancer, it leads to making you sleepy, it leads to decreasing other hormones. So bringing down insulin by a little bit of a fast, and the other upside of fasting is that you turn on growth hormone. You turn on growth hormone, those of you who exercise, you have a better responsiveness to exercise. Muscle is turned on. Now for you deep divers, as far as information, some people will say growth hormone sometimes turns on mTOR, and it can. I think the data is there, but you're not going to be fasting all the time. I think that intermittent fasters usually skip breakfast. I think it's an easy thing to apply because of today's workload. But I think you have to do it with the intent that you're going to be doing an intermittent fast, and then not just rescuing without too much food or alcohol, but intermittent fasting and then feeding the muscle and the brain what it wants in good food. So if you're already targeting healthiness and a wellness type of lifestyle, then it's okay to do the fast, it's okay to do the feeding window or the block, but just have a destination of some sort. So I think the fasting mimicking diet does work, but there is new information that's coming out on ketogenesis. So Dominic D'Agostino out of University of Southern Florida has come up with data in animals showing the ketogenic diet is helpful for glioblastoma multiforme. That's a type of aggressive cancer. And I mean, if they find it in animals, hopefully the next step is going to be phase 2 trials as far as diet, or at least more research in human studies. So the idea, again, is to find your groove, get away from crappy food, induce some form of stimulus, exercise, mindful practice, and then feed the fuel that will help. Anything, I mean, the bottom line is if it hurts, then it's not going to help. So try to get more helpful stuff. And you know, one more thing. I've seen some oncologists suggest just eat anything, and you'll probably hear that, but that's usually while you're in chemotherapy or radiation. Those are people who are vomiting a lot. I do have a video on cannabis and vomiting. But we want to preemptively strike there. You don't want to wait till chemotherapy. You want to do something beforehand. And those of you who have the genes of high cancer rates, you still can turn off the gene expression. So I think leading a healthy life will get you to turn off the gene expression and turn on healing. So try to pay it forward. Does turmeric help? Second question is why does turmeric hurt my stomach? And it's a loaded question, but I'll try to explain it in the short window that we have time to talk. Turmeric in certain societies and cultures has been shown to possibly be related to longevity. Turmeric has been studied, and the active ingredient is curcumin. Curcumin is, in animal studies and human studies, is shown to be great for inflammation fighting. So you either have anti-inflammatory or you have pro-inflammatory. You don't want pro-inflammatory, you want anti-inflammatory. And if you can get the active ingredient of turmeric and dump it in as far as curcumin twice a day, maybe 3 times a day, perfect. But a lot of the supplements out there have curcumin, 500 to 1,000 milligrams. I think per capsule is fine, twice to 3 times a day. But some of them also have turmeric extract. And when you have too much of the turmeric, like if you're just doing whole food and you're just cooking a lot of turmeric, that's a plethora of one root suddenly, and it could be a problem. So just think of this. If there was a study that came out that said watermelon is good for fighting prostate cancer, and then guys started having like barrels of watermelon every day, obviously that's not going to be good for your digestive system. So try to work it into your diet, your nutrition practice. Maybe even try cooking a couple dishes with turmeric in them. If you can't, or your nutrition skills and your cooking skills are low, I'd say try curcumin, the active ingredient. I like Doctor's Best. It was reviewed by Consumer Labs. Doctor's Best, high absorption curcumin. Usually, again, 500 milligrams. They also sell 1,000 milligrams. 500 milligrams 2 times a day, I think, is fair. And CBD, but we'll talk about that next week. How often should I exercise? So let me just show you the questions. How often should I exercise? And that too is patient specific. I would say, or client specific. I would say it's important to sprinkle in a little form of exercise to be in a healthy lifestyle. I think mobility, movement is important. I mean, if you ever watch kids on the ground, toddlers, they have the best form. They know exactly what to do, and they haven't been taught. They just move. Locomotion is what we have to do as humans. So when we start to sit on a chair and do this for 8 hours a day, stagnation is not good. So I would say everybody should move. Whether you use cardiovascular fitness or resistance training or hiking and yoga and Tai Chi, it's totally up to you and what you have available to you and your knowledge base. But I'd say 2 times a week to 3 times a week would be nice as a start. Now I'll get to that question in a second. But so again, just what should I do before with regards to exercise? I think again, if you can squeeze in 2 times to 3 times a week, that'd be fine. If I mentioned 2 times to 3 times a day, that's too much. 2 times to 3 times a week, that'd be fine. Mostly because delayed onset muscle soreness happens in about 48 hours. So if your muscles, your joints are fine-tuned to accept a little bit of damage and stress, that's what you're doing. With exercise, you're stressing the muscle, so it's better to tolerate the next stressor. I think that 48 hours is when delayed onset muscle soreness should be reversed. If it's lasting longer than that, or you're a fibromyalgia sufferer, you might want to give yourself a bigger window of recovery. But if you can get by with 48 hours and you're ready to go for another exercise, then put the exercise, then hit it again. Again, that's about 3 times a week, and that's by the American working schedule. I think it's fair. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, easy to remember. Now, if you have the onset of pain and it's lasting a week, you really should see a rehab specialist, a doctor, or ask a coach. Again, you can find a lot of coaches, my friends at the Endorphin Effect in Bartlett. You can reach out to us via internet, so I'll put the link for the Endorphin Effect down below. Now, what type of exercise is the best type of exercise? And then, again, as I alluded to in the last question, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for lowering blood pressure, if you're looking for controlling insulin and diabetes, if you're looking for lowering cholesterol or triglycerides, or if you're looking for defeating fibromyalgia, it has to be personally designed. And that's why you might need a coach or a doctor that's well versed in exercise. But if you're just average Joe and Jane and you're looking for an exercise routine, I would always say cardiovascular fitness important, some form of cardio, where you're getting your heart rate elevated for a certain amount of time. That could be the erg, which is a rowing machine. That could be a bike. That could be running. That could be HIIT training, although I'd be careful with HIIT training. High intensity interval training is great. It really gets you a robust amount of endorphin, but sometimes it opens you up to injury, which is really the important key here is you should exercise, but you shouldn't injure yourself. So if you're not sure what you're doing, get a physical therapist or a coach to teach you. If you are relying on your old exercises from when you were a kid in high school or college, or your organized sport you used to do 20 years ago, just be really careful because sometimes, especially with rowing, using that ergonomic machine. So if you've ever been to a rowing class, or if you've ever had watching the guys row, the crew team row, those guys are built for rowing, so they're used to one form of exercise, and they're monsters and well conditioned, but you have to be careful because sometimes that opens you up to injury later on when you're older, or if you haven't been well versed with other things. Cross training is great, it's a good attempt, but sometimes when your body is used to one form of exercise and you try to cross train with another exercise type, you can again open yourself to injury. So we want to avoid injury. So I think that cardiovascular fitness is great. Resistance training is great. I think resistance training is important, even if you're older. So I'm 58 years old. I intend on being a resistance trainer and cardiovascular fitness expert way into my 70s. Hopefully, we'll see. But I think resistance keeps you from falling. Resistance keeps muscle girth going. And when your muscle is fine-tuned, you'll be able to take in and eliminate glucose out of the bloodstream immediately. So you don't even need insulin for that to lower glucose. So those of you who are diabetics, exercise is the first thing you should do to lower glucose, in addition to diet. So, and then again, those older forms of exercise, yoga, Tai Chi, really important. Just regular hiking is fair too. But I think mixing it up is very important. If you're not sure how to mix it up and or you are working with an injury, a defect, missing an extremity, get to your rehab specialist and they should be able to design something for you. Last but not least, will fasting help with weight loss? And yes. So there's a couple of different ways that fasting helps. Number one, just by decreasing total volume per day, I think it's important. I think, unfortunately, standard American diet sucks just because it's so laden with crap. But the volume in the standard American diet is way too much, especially with us in COVID times. I think when your workstation is next to your kitchen, it's too easy to dive into your kitchen. So try to feel a little bit of fasting every once in a while. Now, if you read the information out of Jason Fung's book, The Obesity Code, he talks about having a window of fasting. And if you have a window of fasting and you're measuring that, you will also have an alternative window of feeding. So when you start to just devote yourself to acknowledging that there's a time, I think there's a win. Now, the objective of fasting is that it turns off insulin, you lower insulin, and you raise growth hormone. So those of you who are diabetics, or if you've heard about insulin resistance, insulin, when it's constantly elevated because of glucose, too much carbohydrate, the wrong type of carbohydrate, that's dangerous because it turns on the potential for inflammation. Now, if you lower insulin because you get hungry, that would be the first step. But the only problem is, now, if you do have any kind of medicines you're taking, you really have to get this cleared by your doctor. But so fasting turns off insulin, turns on growth hormones. So those of you who are in the gym and you're not getting the results might be wanting to introduce a little bit of a fast. The other thing that's good with fasting is it does turn on ketosis, and when you're on ketosis, you actually burn more fat. So ketogenic diet is one example of fasting, and sometimes if you can get to the point of practicing ketosis, you don't have to. I'm plant-based and I can heat ketosis easily, but if you can turn on beta hydroxybutyrate by getting into ketosis and by having a little fasting window, that would be perfect. Now, if you're not sure what to do with that, you really should have a nutritionist or one of us as coaches design that for you. If you are going to experiment on your own, again, as long as you've been cleared by your doctor, I think that's fair. But fasting does help with regards to weight loss because those pointers. Number one, it decreases total volume per day. Number two, it makes you more conscious about what you're eating. And if you have a goal, like you want to lose a certain amount of pounds or kilos, or if you want to build up muscle, if you want to get yourself ready for a 14,000 foot hike, you have a goal and you'll be committed more to enduring, because it does get boring and it does get challenging during times of stress. So commitment is important. Now, in addition, sometimes by just staying away from food and developing a lower insulin and turning on ketosis, you'll start to develop regularity with burning fat. So every cell in your body has a way of either turning on fat burning or turning on glucose burning. And if you're only used to glucose burning, you don't know how to burn fat, then you might be accumulating more and more fat. So those of you who are overweight with a body mass index into the 30s, you want to be able to burn fat. So it isn't going to hurt to starve a little bit or be fasting with growling. So you have to get used to that first. If you try fasting and suddenly you have every symptom in the world, headache, chest pain, shortness of breath, dizziness, then you really have to pull back a little bit. Maybe get some blood tests beforehand. And I should say, all this is not meant to be a medical, this is not meant to take care of your medical problems. You should always get this cleared. We can't really give medical advice. These are just things that I do for my clients and patients. So seek out what your doctor would do for you. Maybe get some guidance. Contact me on Herbal 401. Otherwise, hopefully by next week we'll have more questions for you. And you can always reach me on my Herbal 401 YouTube webpage. So check it out.